Hello everyone, it's me Rizzyrez. First impressions are everything when it comes to a lot of different things, such as meeting new people, going to a new place, and watching a new show. And that is definitely the case for Ben 10. The first episode of a show ultimately decides if you're going to keep watching or not and whether or not you're interested. These episodes are called pilot episodes and there are 4 of them in Ben 10, one for each of the series. Fun fact, they use the word pilot episode because that's the first time that the show has been on air. Today we're going to be ranking all 4 of the pilot episodes in Ben 10 from what I think is the worst one to the best one. Or in this case, it's actually kind of just the least best to the best because I don't really hate any of these episodes. This is all my opinion, and so without further ado, make sure to like and subscribe and let's get right into my top 4, in this case, pilot episodes. Firstly, I have to set some ground rules. Number 1, these episodes only count if they are the very first episode of the show. So Season 1, Episode 1 of Classic Alien Force Ultimate Alien and Omniverse. Number 2, if the pilot is a 2-parter episode, then I'll be counting both episodes. If I just used the first part of it, it wouldn't really make sense and it would kind of skew the rankings a bit. These 2-parters can easily be shortened down to 1 episode. Yeah, with all the rules set, time to get on to my number 4 spot. Coming in at my number 4 spot, and technically the worst pilot episode, is Fame, the pilot episode for Ultimate Alien. Now, as you guys know, I love UA, and as an extension of that, this episode. But I think it's pretty widely agreed that this is probably 4th place of the pilot episodes. I'm not even calling it the worst one, because it's a really good episode. It just doesn't really feel like a pilot episode. See, the main purpose of a pilot episode is to give you like kind of a basic rundown of how the show works and just give you a nice introduction to it and introduce you to the characters and the stories and etc. And you just don't get that in Fame. It kind of relies too hard on knowing that you watched Alien Force beforehand. Now, I actually really like this episode. Ben's identity gets leaked, so he tracks down the leaker only to find out that he's just like a 12-year-old kid named Jimmy Jones, which is unironically one of my favorite characters in UA. I don't know, just the idea of like a little Ben 10 superfan who leaked his identity, it resonates with me really well. Ben gets arrested and we meet Colonel Rosem and learn about Bivalven's plans to use a nuclear bomb to fix his ship. The trio then find and fight Bivalven and then lose. They find him and beat him and leave him there and waiting for the plumbers to come get him. But when they thought that the plumbers came to get him, someone else was there first. This episode also debuts 2 incredible villains, both voiced by John DiMaggio. One of them is one of the best characters in the entire franchise, having the best motivations, stories, and arcs, and the other one is Agregor. It ultimately makes sense why this episode doesn't have much explanation to it because it really is just Season 4 of Alien Force. Ultimate Alien is really so similar to Alien Force that it could just be a part 2 to it. But that still doesn't stop it from being number 4 on my list. On to number 3. Number 3 on my list is the Omniverse pilot episodes The More Things Change Part 1 and 2. I think the main distaste from this episode just comes from the big change from UA to Omniverse. People were really mad about that back in 2012. Although for me, when this episode came out, I didn't really have that same distastement. Probably because I was 4 years old and didn't really understand what art style change was when this episode came out. But hey, I still liked it either way. The episode starts with the trio of Ben, Gwen, and Kevin fighting Zombozo. And then when they beat him, we find out that they're actually splitting up. Gwen goes over to a university and Kevin goes with her. Now Ben's on his own, ready to take on the world. We get introduced to some new characters, Ben's new Omnitrix and his new aliens, and the new tone of the show. Speaking of characters, we get introduced to one of the best characters in the entire show in this episode, Rook Blanco. Rook is just an incredible character. He's like funny, but he's like not trying to be funny, but he's just so fun to have on the screen. So much more stuff than I thought I did happens in this episode. We get introduced to Mr. Bauman, Pakma, Bubble Helmet, Festina, Liam, Kyber, the Nematrix, and the new Siphon. Plus we get 9 aliens transformed into by Ben. I really like this pilot, but I think it just throws too many things at you at one time. So that is why it's number 3 on my list. Now this next pick could be pretty controversial, but my number 2 pick is the Alien Force pilot, The Return of Ben 10 Part 1 and 2. I know a lot of people like this pilot, but for me, it's just number 2. I think what this 2-parter does really well is introduce the characters. The Alien Force trio is probably like my favorite group of characters that we've had in all the series, and I think this introduces them very well. It introduces my favorite character, Kevin Levin, and also my favorite version of Ben and Gwen. It also starts the storyline of the hybrid, which is probably one of my favorite arcs in Ben 10. It also introduces us to Swampfire, Humongousaur, and Echo Echo, which are some of the most popular Alien Force aliens. Also, the Alien Force cast is just, in my opinion, the best one out of all the casts of aliens. Now, time for my criticisms, and which, for me, I feel like the second part isn't as memorable as the first one. The first part of this two-parter is so iconic. The scene when Ben recalibrates the Omnitrix is probably one of the most watched scenes of Ben 10. I just feel like part 1 really outweighs part 2. And also for my second criticism of this two-parter, this episode is so dark. I can barely see anything that's happening in most of the scenes in this episode. Why does Alien Force and Ultimate Alien do this? They just make everything so dark. This is something that Classic and Omniverse does a lot better than UAF, I have to admit. But come on, like, please, just show us what's around. I really like this episode and I really enjoy most of the things that happen in it, but for me, it's number 2 on my list. And now for my number 1 spot on my pilots ranked list, you know what it is. It's the Classic Series episode, And Then There Were 10. It's the first pilot episode. It's the first episode of Ben 10. Come on, you can't be the classics. This episode just has iconic written all over it. Everyone remembers the scene when Ben goes into the forest and he says, "Whoa, a shooting star!" And then the Omnitrix comes down and grabs him and he turns into his first ever transformation, Heat Blast. It's just too good. This episode also introduces Gwen and Max Tennyson, which Max is actually my favorite version of him in the Classic series. Gwen, I do prefer the Alien Force version, but I still enjoy her in the Classic series and her dynamics with Ben. Well, some of the time. This episode also introduces the greatest transformation that Ben has ever transformed into and set foot on the Ben 10 Earth, Diamond Head. And it also introduces one of the most iconic villains, Vilgax, at the very start of it. If you watch this video, then you'll know why I like Classic series Vilgax. I love how this episode gives us a guide on how the Omnitrix works, because this is something that the later series failed to do. In fact, the Ultimatrix doesn't even have a set way of opening up the dial. It just pops up. Man, I feel like a fake Ultimate Alien fan today. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that. Another thing I really like in this episode is that Ben and Gwen really feel like kids here. Especially in this scene when Ben is kind of daring himself to use the Omnitrix and he transforms into Wildmutt. Everyone loves this episode and everyone remembers it. It's the pilot of the pilot episodes, and that is why it's number 1 on my list. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed and I hope my opinions didn't make you angry or anything. Leave a like and subscribe if you want to. I want to hit 1,000 subs in the foreseeable future. I've got more videos coming out, don't worry. I know I missed an upload, even though I said that in the last video, I think, depending on... I don't know which video came out before this, if this video came out first, because I'm recording multiple videos in one day, so I'm not sure which one will come out first, but yeah. So that's all I really got to say for now. So until next time, I'll see you later. Peace.